I never dreamed that when I woke up, not only had I transmigrated, but I'd also started out surrounded by wolves. My name is Xiangdong. In my previous life, I was a 996 corporate drone, and I'd just dozed off on my desk for a while. When I opened my eyes again, I was already sitting on a northbound train in 1967. The memories in my head told me. The original owner of this body was a farmer from a village in the mountains near Qingzhou, Xiangdong. There were 8 people in his family, and he was the 3rd child, the least favored one. It wasn't that his parents didn't love him. Mainly it was because this kid had an absurd appetite since childhood, able to eat the rations of 2 or 3 people by himself. The little bit of land the production team had was nowhere near enough for him to burn through. From childhood to adulthood, he had never truly eaten his fill. Later, the production team leader came up with an idea. He should simply go to Beidawang and join his aunt Li Ho-Hot, who had married far away. There was more land and more grain over there, certainly better than staying home and going hungry. His aunt had married into Shuangjing village in Beiluo County, Tongjiang area, and his uncle-in-law was named Sun Qingfeng. The couple had settled there years ago. After the family discussed it, they felt this was a way to survive. They signed him up, sent a letter to his aunt, and the paperwork was approved very quickly. The state also issued frontier support supplies, a brand new army green cotton coat, cotton pants, cotton shoes, and a cotton hat, plus a set of bedding. Before I left, my parents took out 20 yuan from the only 30 yuan the family had and stuffed it into my hand. A poor family still needs ample travel funds. Looking at those crumpled bills, I felt awful, but I also knew that once I left, I'd have to rely on myself. The train was full of impassioned, educated youth, singing and dancing, their eyes full of light. I didn't dare say a word, afraid that if I talked too much I'd give myself away. So I just sat gloomily in the corner, heading north all the way with the clack-clack of the rails. When we arrived at Hugong Station, the resettlement office gave me a bus ticket to Beiluo County and told me to transfer on my own and report there. Hugong to Beiluo was 70 kilometers, an easy drive in later times, but in those days it took 2 or 3 hours of bumping along. The snowy road was slippery, and the bus creaked forward inch by inch. Then halfway there, it broke down. The driver crawled under the vehicle and tinkered for ages without fixing it, while a whole bus of people stamped their feet from the cold. As luck would have it, several trucks came up from behind, a convoy transporting educated youth to a farm. The leading cadre's surname was Chun. As soon as he heard the situation, he immediately called everyone to get on and squeeze together so they could give us a lift. The moment I climbed into the truck bed, I heard someone shout, "Hey, it's you. Give us a hand." I looked up and saw it was one of the more active young men from that group of educated youth on the train, named Wang Yang. He warmly hauled my luggage up and introduced me one by one. Lu Xingli, Sun Dajuan, Xin Fang, and there was also a girl named Yu Yurong. I couldn't help taking a couple more looks. It couldn't be helped. That name was just too memorable, and she really did live up to it. Her figure suited the name perfectly. Wang Yang asked where I was going, and I said Shuangjing village. They were headed to Xiangyang farm, not far away. The young people chatted the whole way and got along quite well. Wang Yang patted my shoulder and said, "Dongzi, from now on we're comrades in arms in Beidawang. If anything comes up, just say the word." I said okay, I'd come find them after I got settled. By the time the truck reached Beiluo County town, it was already past noon. After finishing the formalities, I went to the roadside inn and spent 0.3 yuan to make do for the night. The owner was warm-hearted. Seeing me carrying my bedroll and planning to travel alone, he specifically warned me, "Kid, don't go by yourself tomorrow. It's more than 30 li of mountain road, with deep snow and dense forest. And if you run into wolves, that's no joke. Wait until there are more people to go together, or flag down a horse cart or something." I agreed verbally, but I didn't take it too seriously. I was a grown young man, and in broad daylight too. Could I really be scared by some beasts? Early the next morning, I left the city at first light. At first there were still scattered pedestrians on the road, but the farther out I went, the fewer people there were. The snow on the ground was knee-deep. Every step sank with a soft crunch, and even pulling my foot back out took effort. The military coat was thick enough, but it was no match for the sub-zero wind of 20 or 30 degrees below, which cut across my face with a stinging pain like tiny knives slicing flesh. I wrapped my cotton cap tighter and trudged forward with my head down. I had figured 4 or 5 hours would surely get me there, but by the time the sun was slanting west, I had only made it a little over halfway. By the time dusk was falling, I was the only person left out in the wilderness. The woods on both sides of the road were pitch black, and now and then a few calls from unknown birds drifted out, swirling in the wind, chilling to hear. I'm not a particularly timid person. A kid raised in the countryside. I'd even slept in graveyards before, and I was never afraid of walking at night. But for some reason that day, as I kept walking, a chill suddenly shot up my spine, and every hair on my body stood on end. It wasn't the cold brought by the wind, but a kind of chill that seemed to seep out from the cracks in my bones. My heart skipped a beat, and I stopped in my tracks instinctively. The moonlight spread a pale, ghastly white over the snowy road, casting everything around me in a dim half-light. Slowly, I turned my head and glanced behind me. 50 or 60 meters away, crouching in the middle of the road, was a gray, dusty-looking shape. Its two eyes glowed with a dim green light, fixed on me without moving. A wolf. My head buzzed, and the innkeeper's warning exploded in my ears all at once. I clenched my fists and forced myself to calm down. By now it was completely dark, and this place was in the middle of nowhere. No one was coming to save me, and running back was even less realistic. 2 legs could never outrun 4. I took a deep breath, walked straight to the roadside without another word, picked out a birch tree, reached up and snapped off a branch about as thick as an egg, then in a few quick motions broke it down into a stick more than a meter long, weighed it in my hand, and felt a little more reassured. When I turned back around, the wolf was still there, watching me at its leisure, as if considering where to sink its teeth in. I cursed inwardly. This beast was clever. It was waiting for me to show an opening. I couldn't let it see fear. The elders back home used to say that when you run into a wolf, the worst thing you can do is be afraid. The more panicked you are, the fiercer it gets. If you stand tough, it will think twice instead. I dropped my bedroll and canvas bag to the ground, gripped the stick with both hands, and planted my feet wide apart, staring fixedly into those green eyes. Just as we were facing off, I caught something from the corner of my eye. Another one sprang out from the roadside brush not far ahead, blocking my way forward. My heart sank. One in front blocking me, one behind on my tail. They were trying to box me in. Fine then. Tonight it would be either them or me. Countless thoughts flashed through my mind like an electric current. The 20 yuan my parents had stuffed into my hand still hadn't been spent. I didn't even know which way my aunt's front door faced, and Wang Yang and the others were still waiting for me to visit them at the farm. I've finally been given a second shot at life. Was I really going to be finished off here by you 2 beasts? The 2 wolves were in no hurry at all. One in front and one behind. They stopped 20 or 30 meters away from me. One of them simply half-crouched and sat down, staring at me with those gleaming green eyes as if it were looking at a dead man. My heart lurched. Damn, these 2 beasts were deliberately trying to wear me down. Wrapped in their thick fur, they could withstand it, but no matter how thick my cotton coat was, it couldn't hold off the -40-degree cold of the second half of the night. Once I froze to the point that my hands and feet stopped obeying me. I'd be meat on the chopping block, theirs to butcher as they pleased. No, I had to seize the initiative. I spotted my chance, tightened my grip on the stick, and charged straight at the wolf in front. When that beast saw me charge, it got up, turned, and ran. If I stopped, it stopped too. If I turned back, it followed again. After going back and forth a few times, the wolf was perfectly fine, while I was the one left panting from exhaustion, sweat steaming inside my padded coat. When the wind hit me, the cold and heat together made me feel even worse. You 2 have practically turned into demons, huh? Stringing me along for fun, is that it? I leaned on my stick and gasped for breath, but my eyes quickly swept both sides. On both sides of the road were white birch woods, overgrown with withered shrubs and dead grass, and the ground was littered with fallen leaves and dry branches. An idea came to me. Wild beasts fear fire. If I could get a fire going, at least I could buy myself some time and warm myself up a bit. While my body could still move freely, I turned and plunged into the woods. When I reached a birch tree as thick around as my waist, I used the stick to rake together a pile of dry leaves and branches, then peeled off a big piece of birch bark from the trunk. Birch bark is good stuff. It catches fire the moment it touches flame and burns strong. Folks in the Northeast all use it as tinder. I pulled out a match from my pocket and struck it. The flame licked at the birch bark, and with a hiss, it flared right up. But before I could toss the burning birch bark onto the pile of firewood, 2 gray shadows had already crept close in the corner of my eye. These 2 beasts were cunning as hell. While I was looking down to start the fire, they had silently sneaked right up to me. That little flame couldn't scare them at all. They had come for the express purpose of eating me. So how could fire possibly frighten them off? The wind suddenly sharpened, and a gray shadow lunged through the air. I had no time to think. My body jerked sharply to the side, and I casually flung the birch bark in my hand onto the pile of firewood, then raised the stick with both hands, and smashed it straight at the wolf's head. Just as it was about to connect, the wolf forcefully twisted its waist in midair and sprang aside, dodging the blow. "Pretty nimble, aren't you?" I cursed, and before it could land and steady itself, I swung a second blow. Just like that, 2 wolves and 1 man became locked in a fierce struggle in the white birch woods. All my attention was drawn tight, like a bowstring. In my ears there was only the wolves' low growls, the whoosh of the stick cutting through the air, and my own heavy panting. At first, we were evenly matched, and neither side could injure the other, but as time dragged on, a man could never match a beast's endurance. My padded coat was soaked through with sweat and clung to my body, and at some point my gloves had been flung off. My hands were frozen red, and the web between thumb and forefinger was numb from the shocks. This had to be ended quickly. Just as I was thinking that, one of the wolves lunged at me head-on again. This time I gathered all the strength in my body and calculated the lead, then brought the stick down viciously with a rush of wind. With a crisp crack, the stick, as thick as an egg, snapped cleanly into 2, and the wolf's head took the blow solidly, letting out a blood-curdling howl of agony as its whole body was knocked flying and slammed heavily into the snow. But in that very same instant, the other wolf pounced from the side. Its fangs aimed straight for my arm. I had no time to pull back my swing, so I could only reverse my grip on the remaining half of the broken stick and drive the jagged broken end hard at the lunging wolf. With a wet thud, the broken stick stabbed into the wolf's belly. With a rip, the wolf's fangs also caught my shoulder. My shoulder went cold for a moment, followed immediately by a searing pain, and a huge gash was torn open in my brand new military coat. White cotton stuffing spilled out and was quickly stained red with blood. I had no time to care about the pain. Before that wolf could struggle back up from the ground, I sprang forward in one stride and viciously drove the broken stick in under its neck. With a crack, its windpipe was severed and the stick punched straight through. The wolf spun around on the ground, making a gurgling, wheezing sound from its throat. It could only breathe out now, not in. The other wolf, the one I'd stunned with a blow, saw this scene, tucked its tail between its legs and limped off into the depths of the woods, vanishing in the blink of an eye. I leaned on the half-broken stick and panted for quite a while, and after making sure the one that had fled wasn't coming back, I slowly squatted down and looked at the wolf on the ground that had completely stopped breathing. Once my taut nerves relaxed, my whole body suddenly felt like it was falling apart, and only then did the wound on my shoulder start screaming with pain. I turned my head to look at the tear in my army coat and the cotton batting spilling out, and it made my teeth ache with distress. This was a brand new coat I'd just been issued before setting out. I'd only worn it for 2 days, and the novelty hadn't even worn off before it was torn. I lifted my foot and kicked the dead wolf hard a couple of times to vent my anger. But even after kicking it, my heart still ached. Torn was torn. No amount of regret would make it new again. The surroundings fell back into deathly silence, with only the sound of the wind weaving through the woods. The smell of blood spread especially fast in the cold air, and there was no telling what it might attract before long. I didn't dare stay any longer, so I kicked some snow over the firewood that hadn't caught yet to smother it out, then grabbed the dead wolf by a hind leg and dragged it back onto the dirt road. The snow on the ground was thick, so dragging it along wasn't too strenuous. I picked up my bedding roll and canvas bag and slung them back on, dragging the wolf with one hand and leaning on the broken stick with the other as I pushed on into the wind. After walking for more than another hour, I finally faintly made out the outlines of a cluster of low houses in the distance. There were no lights and no barking dogs. The whole village lay quietly on the snowy plain like a sleeping beast. When I reached the entrance, the moonlight shone on a crooked wooden sign, and the 3 characters on it were perfectly clear: Xiangdong Village. I let out a long plume of white breath. I'd finally made it. But at this hour, every household had long since put out their lights and gone to sleep, and it was pitch black. I didn't even know which way my aunt's front door faced. After circling around, I found a dilapidated adobe house at the north end of the village. The door was gone, and the window paper was torn to shreds, and several holes had caved in through the thatched roof, so that when I looked up I could see the stars. But no matter how broken down it was, it still had 4 walls and could block the wind. I dropped the dead wolf by the doorway, went inside, found a pile of dry straw in a corner, spread it out, and tossed my luggage on top. Then I went outside again to gather some dead branches and built a small fire in the middle of the room. I took out my enamel mug, went outside to fill it with snow, then brought it back and set it over the fire to melt. I still had a little dry rations left on me, so I warmed them by the fire and made do with them in the hot water for dinner. With my belly full, I leaned against my bedding roll and stared blankly at the crackling, flickering flames. From the moment I boarded the train in Jinan until now, this whole journey had felt like a dream. An overworked office drone who fell asleep at his desk had woken up as a sent-down youth bound for the Beidawang, traveling 1,000 miles to seek out an ant he'd never met, and on the way had even fought 2 wolves, nearly ending up as Wolf Dung. My army coat was torn, my shoulder was wounded, and there were only a dozen or so yuan left in my pocket, but at least there was a dead wolf lying by my feet, so at least I'd have a present in hand when I met my aunt tomorrow. As for how I was supposed to live from here on out, I hadn't the faintest idea, but as long as I could get enough to eat, then this trip wouldn't have been for nothing. The fire gradually dimmed, and drowsiness came over me like a rising tide. I closed my eyes, and the last thought that flashed through my mind was, tomorrow, once I find my aunt's house, the first thing I'll do is skin this wolf. At the very least, I can trade it for a pair of warm gloves for myself. In his half-asleep haze, it seemed like the howls of those 2 wolves rang in his ears again. He turned over in the darkness and mumbled indistinctly, "Damn weeds. If you're not afraid of dying, then come on up and try. I'm short on meat right now." After snarling that, Xiangdong picked up his stick and set off again. After he walked on, a wolf darted out of the woods, following him from far behind, and that led to the scene from the beginning. Fortunately, relying on his own courage, Xiangdong defeated those 2 wolves and even killed one. Looking back at the wolf lying discarded beside him, a smile appeared at the corner of Xiangdong's mouth. Now he had a gift to bring when meeting his aunt's family. With a gift in hand, when he met his aunt later, at least it wouldn't put her in an awkward position. After all, life wasn't easy for any family right now, and he could really eat. Although his uncle wouldn't say anything out loud, he would inevitably have thoughts about it. With this wolf, at the very least he wouldn't say anything for a while. In a few days, once his household registration and grain supply affiliation were all settled, and his grain ration was issued, then there would be even less of a problem. After his household registration and grain supply affiliation were sorted out, the next thing would be to think about how to earn money to support himself. Although right now he was in the state of one person fed and the whole family not hungry. But the problem was that he could really eat. You had to know that at this time everything was under the collective economy, and everyone in the village earned work points. A strong laborer could earn only 10 work points in a day. If the production team leader assigned some other kind of work, then earning 13 or 14 work points would already count as a lot. But days with that many work points didn't come every day. Over the course of an entire year, at most, it would only be 280 work days, for a total of 2,800 work points. In places like the Northeast, it might even be a bit less, since the weather here was cold and the busy farming season was only about 150 days. And in the remaining time, aside from the especially cold period when people had to stay in for the winter, the production team would organize people to build water conservancy facilities, apply base fertilizer, or do sideline work and the like, which added up to about 100 days of work. Even if you calculated on the basis of 280 workdays a year, a strong laborer could earn roughly 5 jin of grain a day. So over the course of a year, he could get 1,400 jin of grain. If it were women, the elderly, or children, it would be reduced further. Women could only get 8 work points a day, while the elderly and children could get only 5 or 6 work points. For a normal family of 4, with a husband and wife and 2 children, that came to about 3,900 jin of grain a year. But this grain was not all distributed directly. It was allocated according to ration grain and work point grain, and the ratio for this distribution was 70% by person and 30% by labor. Out of 3,900 jin of grain, the ration grain actually received would be 2,730 jin, and the remaining 1,170 jin would be work point grain. At the end of each year, the work point grain could be taken as money or as grain. If taken as money, payment would be made according to the procurement price. This procurement price was only about 0.10 yuan, so his family could still receive 117 yuan in cash, and that was the money they could earn in a year. This money still had to be used to buy all sorts of household necessities, including cotton, cloth, salt, kerosene, needles and thread, and so on. Of course, all this was only what could be obtained in theory. In reality, it depended on the village's grain output that year. After deducting the public grain, grain for unified planning, and the collectively retained seeds, feed, and such, only what remained would be distributed according to the 30-70 split. If the harvest was poor that year, then much less would end up in individuals' hands. But there was one hard standard, and that was whether it reached 360. That meant at the very least, each person had to be guaranteed 360 jin of grain ration a year. But what if there really wasn't enough? Then the only option was to use melons and vegetables as a substitute. And this was only talking about the income of a family of 4, with 2 laborers and 2 children. But if there are many people in the family and few able-bodied workers, then let alone having any surplus, they might even end up owing the production team. If Li Xiangdong were to settle down in Xiangdong village, then as a strong laborer, he could earn 1,400 jin of grain a year. It sounds like a lot, but he has a big appetite. In other families, one able-bodied worker eating 3 meals a day can get by on 4 jin of grain, but he would need at least 6 jin. Other people could make those 1,400 jin last a whole year, but for him, it would only last 7 or 8 months. What was he supposed to do for the remaining months? This was a very serious problem. Turning his head and seeing the dead wolf lying off to the side, Li Xiangdong's eyes shifted, and it seemed that now there was only one way to make money. Only with money could he buy grain and keep himself from going hungry all the time. As the saying goes, live off the mountain by the mountain and off the water by the water. Right behind this place was the lesser Xiangdong range, and there were countless kinds of animals in the mountains. As long as he could catch prey, aside from handing over a portion to the production team, the rest could belong to him personally. He could sell his personal share to the supply and marketing cooperative for money. Right now, this was the only way to make money. If he wanted to do business or anything like that, he'd have to wait another 10-odd years. But the problem was, even if he decided to go hunting, he still needed some equipment first. If he went hunting barehanded, what could he possibly catch? But as for buying a gun, he shouldn't even think about it right now. With the little more than 10 yuan he had left on hand, buy a hammer, maybe. In the store, a brand new hunting gun. A single-barrel one cost 120 yuan, and a double-barrel one went up to 200 yuan. Even a second-hand one would still cost 70 or 80 yuan. As for other rifles like the Type 53 and the Type 56 semi-auto, he absolutely shouldn't even think about them. Never mind whether there were any for sale on the black market. Even if there were, the price would be outrageously high, and more importantly, ammunition was hard to come by. Right now he was poor as could be, truly without so much as a room to his name or a strip of land. If he wanted to make money, he had to go into the mountains to hunt. Take the wolf right in front of him, for example. Although he had poked 2 holes in the pelt, if he skinned it off, it would probably still sell for 10 or 8 yuan or so. The meat could also be eaten, gun or no gun. Even with just an axe, he had to head into the mountains. Li Xiangdong made up his mind. That whole night, Li Xiangdong basically did not sleep. One reason was that thoughts kept surging through his mind, and the second was that it was simply too cold. Although there was a fire nearby, this shabby house let in wind from all sides, and the temperature inside never really rose. It had to have stayed at around more than 10 degrees below zero. At this temperature, if he fell asleep, he would definitely end up freezing himself into some kind of illness. Whenever he got unbearably sleepy, he would get up and move around, and when he went out to carry in firewood, he would rub snow on his face. He endured like this until daybreak was just beginning. Just as Li Xiangdong was feeling drowsy and muddle-headed, he heard someone's footsteps approaching. When they got close, someone called out, "Who's there? Who's in this house?" Li Xiangdong quickly stood up and walked out, seeing an old man of about 60 in his sight. "Hello, sir, it's me." The old man looked him up and down. "Who are you? How did you come to be staying here?" "Oh, my name is Li Xiangdong. Sun Qingfeng's wife is my aunt, and I came to find them. I arrived too late last night, so I just made do here for the night." "Ah, you child, since you've arrived, why didn't you go into the house? It's so cold in here." As soon as he heard that he was a relative of a family from his own village, the old man's wariness immediately dropped. Li Xiangdong scratched his head awkwardly. "Heh, mainly because I didn't know which house was my aunt's. When I got here last night, the whole village was dark, so it wasn't good to disturb anyone. Now look at that, what are you saying? No matter how late it was, you could have knocked on doors house to house. All right, hurry up, I'll take you to your aunt's house. Hurry and pack up your things." Li Xiangdong answered and went back into the rundown shack to gather his belongings, and the old man followed him in. As soon as he entered, he saw the wolf lying on the ground and couldn't help exclaiming in surprise, "Well now, how come there's a blue hide here too? When I was heading toward the village last night, 2 wolves were following me, and I took one down." Li Xiangdong replied with a smile. "You killed it? What did you use to do that?" Li Xiangdong pointed at the half-section of wooden club on the ground. "I used this. I didn't have any other weapon." The old man was even more astonished now, and the way he looked at Li Xiangdong had changed a little. "Young man, not bad you. You took down a wolf with just a stick. Just luck." Li Xiangdong said modestly with a smile. You think this is something anyone can do just by having luck? All right, not bad, not bad. Let's go. Put out the fire, and we'll head to your aunt and uncle's place. After packing up his things, Li Xiangdong came out carrying his luggage in one hand and the already frozen stiff wolf in the other, following the old man out together. Xiangdong village wasn't big to begin with only about 30 households and a little over 100 people in total, all of whom had gradually come to settle here after the settlement was established in the 50s. At first there were only a few households, and it took more than 10 years to grow to over 30. They hadn't walked very far along the village road before the two stopped at a courtyard. All right, we're here. The old man pushed open the wooden fence gate and led Li Xiangdong inside, still calling out, Qingfeng, you home? Hurry out, your family's got a guest. Li Xiangdong set the luggage and the wolf he was carrying to one side, his eyes fixed on the doorway of the house. I'm home, I'm home. Oh, it's second grandpa. Who's come to my house? A voice answered from inside, and soon the door opened. Two people came out from within. They were Li Xiangdong's Aunt Li Hohat and his uncle's son Qingfeng. Old man's son stepped aside, revealing Li Xiangdong, and pointed at him as he said, Qingfeng's family. This young fellow says he's your nephew, come from your old home in Xiangdong. Take a look, is he or not? Li Hohat stared at Li Xiangdong for a moment, a thoughtful look flashing through her eyes, then asked tentatively, Dongzi, is that you? Auntie, uncle, it's me, Dongzi. Li Xiangdong said with a grin as he stepped forward 2 paces and replied to Li Hohat. The moment Li Hohat saw Li Xiangdong, her eyes reddened at once, and she quickly took 2 steps forward, grabbing Li Xiangdong's arm. Dongzi, you've finally come. I've been worrying about you all these days. But wait, how did you get here at this hour? Were you traveling at night? No, I got here last night. I just didn't know where the house was, so I stayed the night in that broken-down house by the edge of the village. Oh my, you silly child. The village is only this big. You could have just asked any family, and you'd have known. That broken-down house has been empty for years. It must have been freezing. Li Xiangdong gave an honest, bashful smile. It's fine, Auntie. I had a fire going, so it felt all right. All right, this is the wolf I got on the road last night coming here. Consider it a greeting gift for you. You ran into a wolf last night. You weren't hurt, were you? Only then did Li Hohat notice the dead wolf on the ground behind Li Xiangdong, set together with the rolled-up bedding, and she quickly started feeling him over to check him. Li Xiangdong smiled. I'm fine, wasn't hurt. Auntie, look, aren't I just fine? It's good you weren't hurt. That was so dangerous. You don't know, there are quite a few wolves and black bears in these woods around here, so you really have to be careful, you know? Got it. Auntie, don't worry, I'll be fine. Where should we put this wolf? Don't worry about it. Let your uncle put it in the storage shed first. In a bit we'll skin the wolf, and Auntie will stew some meat for you. Put the wolf in the storage shed. Son Qingfeng and Li Hohat, husband and wife, then greeted them and led them into the main room. Old man Lu waved his hand. All right, as long as he's your relative. You all chat. I'm still carrying firewood and starting the fire here. Otherwise, when my little grandson gets up, he'll get cold, so I'll head back first. Son Qingfeng answered and walked Lu out. All right, second grandpa, come over at noon for a drink. Only after Li Xiangdong thanked him as well did he follow his aunt and uncle back into the house. After entering the main room and sitting down, Li Hohat impatiently asked about the situation back home. Li Xiangdong told Li Hohat everything he remembered about the family situation. After hearing it, Son Qingfeng lit a cigarette and took a few puffs. Back in the old home, there are too many people and too little land. In these past years, everyone's had it hard. It's good that you came here. Our side just happens to have lots of land and few people. As long as you're willing to work, you won't go hungry. That's right, that's right. Now that you're here, you won't have to worry about going hungry. In the next couple of days, have your uncle go speak to the village production team leader and take you to town to register your household. Then you'll be able to receive grain rations. Li Xiangdong nodded. Thank you, Auntie. Thank you, Uncle. Oh, silly child. We're all family. What are you thanking us for? You haven't eaten breakfast yet, have you? Just wait. Annie will go make you some food. Paternal cousins are still bound by ties even if the bones are broken. An aunt on the father's side and an aunt on the mother's side are not the same. A paternal aunt and her nephew share the same surname, so as an elder in the family, she will pay even more attention to the growth of her nephews and nieces, and will also take the initiative to get involved in her nephew's upbringing and education. A maternal aunt, as the mother's sister, has a relationship that is generally maintained through the mother, and if the mother has passed away or remarried, then the relationship will become much more distant. Therefore, The husband of a paternal aunt is called uncle, while the husband of a maternal aunt is also called uncle. Their husbands also play different roles in this. Of course, this isn't absolute either. In some families, the maternal aunt is closer than the paternal aunt. That a paternal aunt is closer than a maternal aunt is only the traditional understanding people have. While Li Xiangdong and Sun Qingfeng were chatting in the room, the curtain to the west room was lifted, and a girl of 13 or 14 walked out from inside. When she saw Li Xiangdong, she stood shyly at the doorway. "Girl, what are you standing there for?" "This is your uncle's family's brother Xiangdong. Call him second brother." Seeing his daughter standing blankly at the doorway, Sun Qingfeng spoke up. The little girl shyly called out, "Second brother." "Hey, little sister Xiaolan." Li Xiangdong replied with a smile. Auntie's family has 2 children. The elder is the young girl in front of him, named Sun Xiaolan, and she is 13 this year. The younger is a boy, 9 this year, named Sun Xiaolei. "Girl, don't just stand there, come help me cook." "Your little brother still isn't up?" Li Hohat was busy at the stove. "Nope, he's still sleeping like a little pig." Sun Xiaolan replied, walked over and sat on the stool by the stove, and added a few sticks of firewood into the fire pit. "Uncle, I just heard my aunt say there are quite a lot of things in these woods. So are there any hunters in our village?" Li Xiangdong asked Sun Qingfeng. "There are quite a lot of things, wild boars, roe deer, wolves, all of them. But those things aren't something you can just hunt whenever you want and actually get one. There's no one in our village who goes into the mountains to hunt. At most, when people here have nothing to do, they set a few traps out in the fields to catch wild chickens, rabbits, and the like." After Sun Qifeng replied, he looked at Li Xiangdong. "What is it? Dongzi, are you thinking about going into the mountains to hunt?" "Dongzi, that won't do. Hunting is too dangerous. I heard that in the neighboring village, there were people who went into the mountains to hunt, and once they went in, they never came back out. Not even their bodies were found." Li Hohat quickly shot down Li Xiangdong's idea. She doted on her own nephew, and she knew just how dangerous these mountains were, not to mention all those things that happened when she had just married Sun Qingfeng and came here to settle down. Even now, it's nothing unusual for wolves and black bears to enter the village. If some village said wolves had never come in, that would be the strange thing. Li Xiangdong gave a bitter smile. "Auntie, I don't want to go into the forest to hunt either, but I have no choice. I was born with a huge appetite. If I don't think of some way to make money, there won't be enough to eat." "A huge appetite? How much can you eat?" "Around here, we get 1,400 to 1,500 jin of grain a year. That's still not enough for you." "It really might not be enough. Anyway, at home I've never once eaten my fill. Even the grain at home isn't enough." "Fine then, today you eat as much as you want. I want to see just how much you can eat." After hearing what Li Xiangdong said, Li Hohat added another ladle of water to the pot and put in a few more potatoes and corn buns. By the end of the meal, Li Hohat and Sun Qingfeng were truly stunned. There had been more than 10 corn buns in the pot, plus 7 or 8 potatoes, and also the cornmeal porridge. Their family of 4 hadn't eaten much. All the rest went into Li Xiangdong's stomach. This guy alone ate as much as their whole family. "Dongzi, with an appetite like yours, no matter how much grain you're allotted, it won't be enough," Sun Qingfeng exclaimed. Li Xiangdong wiped his mouth and said a little embarrassedly, "Uncle, I just couldn't hold back when I saw food." "It's fine, as long as you ate your fill. Want a little more? Have your aunt roast you another 2 potatoes." No, auntie, I'm full." Li Xiangdong hurriedly stopped Li Hohat, who was about to go get potatoes. To be honest, he was at most only about 80% full right now, but he couldn't keep eating. After stopping Li Hohat, Li Xiangdong said with a smile, "Auntie, if I don't think of some other way, how can that work? So I still have to go into the mountains to hunt." Hearing her nephew say this, Li Hohat had no other choice. It was true. Li Xiangdong's appetite was just too big. The grain allotted every year was quite a lot, but it still wasn't enough for him to eat. If he didn't find some extra income, he wouldn't even be able to support himself. And after the new year, Li Xiangdong would be 19. And in another year or 2, it would be time to find him a wife. If by then he still couldn't even support himself, what family's daughter would be willing to marry him? All right then. If you want to go, then go. But you absolutely must be careful. If things don't work out, just look around the edges of our village. Don't go into the deep mountains." I know, auntie. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. And don't just ignore what your aunt says. This forest is no small danger, and you don't even have a proper weapon in your hands. So you'd better not go too deep in." Sun Qingfeng also chimed in with a warning. Speaking of weapons, Li Hohat suddenly remembered something. "Oh right, Han, doesn't old Chen's family over on the east side of the village have an old musket? If needed, why not borrow it and let Dongzi use it for now? I won't feel at ease about him going into the mountains without anything in his hands. That old musket of theirs is an antique from who knows how many years ago. Whether it can even fire is uncertain, and they might not even be willing to lend it. Then what do we do? There isn't any household left in our village that still has a gun. The brigade does have some, though. Do you think we could borrow one? Sun Xiangdong smiled. Don't even think about the brigade's guns. Not just the guns. Even the bullets are all accounted for. Do you think the captain would take one out for you? Forget it. I'd better go over to Old Chin's place and ask. If that doesn't work, I'll just give him a few yuan. Whether we rent it or buy it, having a gun is better than not having one at all. Li Xiangdong was already thinking last night about not having a gun in hand. And today his aunt and uncle brought it up too. His eyes lit up as well. Uncle, what kind of gun is it? Just an old foreign-style gun, a homemade gun, with a barrel about this long. The kind where you have to load gunpowder every time you fire a shot. Then Li Xiangdong understood. That was the earliest kind of muzzle-loading firearm, where you pour the gunpowder in from the muzzle. Use a ramrod to tamp it down, then put in the wadding and bullet. The advantage it has over old-style muzzle loaders is that this gun can use percussion caps. Pull the trigger, and it will fire. But its rate of fire is extremely slow. For a skilled shooter, getting off one shot in 2 minutes is already pretty good. For a novice, it would take 3 to 5 minutes. And because this kind of gun uses black powder and lead bullets, its effective range is only about 50 meters. Beyond that, it loses accuracy, and whether it hits anything is entirely up to luck. Don't be fooled by what a piece of junk it is. Li Xiangdong doesn't even have one like this right now. Having an old foreign-style gun to use would still be pretty good, much better than carrying a spear or an axe. Sun Xiangdong was also a decisive man and got straight down from the calm. How about this? I'll go over and take a look right now, and while I'm at it, I'll call the captain and second uncle over. Dongzi, stay home and help your aunt skin this wolf and put the meat onto stew. Hey, got it, uncle. Sun Xiangdong put on his coat and went out. Li Xiangdong, meanwhile, got to work skinning the wolf. He didn't actually know how to skin a wolf, but back in his hometown, he had helped others skin sheep before. He figured it should be about the same, as long as he didn't damage the hide. The proper steps for skinning a wolf are actually similar to skinning a dog. First, make the initial cut on the hind leg, cutting a circle around the ankle joint. Then from the cut, slit along the inner side of the hind leg all the way to the anus, so that when the two legs are stretched apart, they form a straight line. Then, just like taking off a pair of pants, pull the skin on the hind legs all the way down to the tail. Then grab the wolf's tail and shake it hard so the entire tailbone can be pulled out, making sure the skin on the tail doesn't tear or split. That takes care of the whole hind leg section. After that, keep pulling it off until you reach the forelegs. The forelegs are handled the same way as the hind legs. The hardest part to handle is the head, especially making sure not to damage the ears, eyes, and nose. After it's all removed, scrape off the fat and bits of meat left on the hide, then rub salt on the inside to preserve it. The final step is to stretch the hide open with wooden sticks, making it into a hide tube, and leave it in a cool, ventilated place to air dry naturally. That way, a wolf pelt is properly skinned. But Li Xiangdong didn't understand any of that. He just did it completely according to the way sheep are skinned. He started right from the wolf's chin, slashed a cut along the belly, and then stripped the whole thing off directly. This was faster, but it also damaged the integrity of the wolf pelt. Fortunately, no one in the household understood this. If there had really been someone knowledgeable who saw Li Xiangdong skinning it like this, they definitely would have said he was ruining something valuable. But they couldn't worry about that right now. After the hide was removed, Li Xiangdong spread it on the small table and, together with his younger siblings, scraped the grease off the hide. Aunt Li Hohot cut half of it and put it in the pot to stew. At noon today, the main purpose was to invite the production team leader over for a meal so they could talk about getting Li Xiangdong registered in the household, so they had to prepare something good. Around noon, Sun Xiangdong came back from outside, and coming back with him were the old man Lu who had brought Li Xiangdong over in the morning, along with another man. When Li Hohot saw them arrive, she quickly stood up to greet them. "Oh, team leader, second uncle, you've come. Come on in and have a seat. The meat is almost done stewing." The production team leader sniffed hard a few times. "Oh ho, this smells really good. I heard Xingfeng say that when your nephew came, he killed a wolf on the way. Impressive. Isn't that so? This kid is really gutsy. He still dared to fight head-on when he ran into a wolf. Luckily, he didn't get hurt." Li Hohot replied with a smile. Then she turned to Li Xiangdong and said, "Dongzi, this is the production team leader of our Shuangjing village. Just call him Uncle Feng." Li Xiangdong responded and smiled at production team leader Feng Shui. Hello, Uncle Feng. Feng Shui looked Li Xiangdong up and down a few times and nodded. He looks good. A fine young lad, just a bit thin. How old are you this year? I'm 18 this year, and after the new year I'll be 19. If you eat more from now on, you'll definitely grow a bit taller. Feng Shui turned to son Qingfeng. Qingfeng, your nephew is pretty good. He'll definitely be a capable hand in the future. Ha, definitely. Back in his hometown, he could do all kinds of work too, but he just has a big appetite. And back in his hometown, there was little land and not much grain to go around. So he could never eat his fill, which is why he came to our side. A grown boy can eat his father poor. That's an old saying. But don't worry. We have more land here and produce more grain, so he definitely won't go hungry. The men sat down in the room and lit cigarettes, while Li Hohat busied herself preparing the meal. Before long, the big pot of stewed wolf meat and vegetables was served, and Sun Qingfeng also brought out 2 bottles of loose liquor and poured some for everyone. After they had eaten and drunk for a while, they started talking about Li Xiangdong's household registration. Since the 1950s, rural youths from provinces south of the Great Wall had been continuously coming here to settle the frontier. Places like Xiangdong village were basically all made up of frontier settlers. So as long as the paperwork was complete, the team had no reason not to accept him. After all, one more person meant one more worker. This had already been agreed upon beforehand. Li Xiangdong had only set out after getting the acceptance certificate. So naturally Feng Shui had no reason to refuse. After taking a sip of liquor, he said, "No problem. If it doesn't snow tomorrow, then let's make a trip to the town and get Dongzi's household registration procedures done. What about where he'll live? Will he stay at your house or set up a separate place?" Sun Qingfeng answered directly. "This winter he'll stay at my place first. After spring comes, we'll build him a house of his own. And in another year or 2, it'll be time for him to get married. He can't do without a house." Feng Shui nodded. That's true. There's no way to build one now anyway. Let's wait until spring. The state provides subsidies for people who settle in the village. It's not much, but it's still 40 or 50 yuan, enough to get a house fixed up. After the young people sent to support the frontier arrived, the state provided subsidies. This money would not be given to the individual, but to the village collective, to be used for the newcomers' settlement expenses. This included housing, tools, and rations. There's one more thing. I want to mention it, and see if you think it'll work, team leader. Sun Qingfeng continued. What is it? Sun Qingfeng handed him a cigarette. Didn't Dongzi kill a wolf on the way back? So after he gets settled in our village, he was thinking whether, while it's still winter, go up into the mountains and do some hunting, maybe earn a bit of money too. Otherwise, life will be hard for him. Under normal circumstances, even when winter comes, the people in the production team still have to work. Though they don't have to work in the fields. But there's still plenty to do, like repairing irrigation ditches, logging, and side jobs. And even when it's so cold that work stops and everyone stays in for the winter, they still have to shell corn at home. So if he wants to go into the mountains to hunt, he has to get the production team leader's approval. Feng Shui turned to look at Li Xiangdong. Dongzi, hunting isn't easy work. You have to face wind and snow, and put your life at risk too. Do you really want to do this? Li Xiangdong nodded firmly. Uncle Feng, I really do want to do this. To be honest with you, I only have a little over 10 yuan on me right now. If I don't find a way to earn some money, I can't keep relying on my aunt and uncle to support me in the future, can I? That's true. All right then, I agree to this. We'll count hunting as the sideline work our village assigns to you. Will you prepare the gear yourself, or use the teams? Li Xiangdong asked curiously. What's the difference? Of course there's a big difference. If you use our teams, then I'll have to set a quota for you. This whole winter, no matter what, you'll have to bring back 300 jin of meat for the team. For the catch within the quota, the team gets 80% and you get 20%. For anything beyond the quota, it's split 60 to 40. The team gets 60% and you get 40%. But as long as you complete the quota, I'll give you full work points. What if I prepare my own gear then? If you prepare your own, it's simple. We split it 40 to 60, you get 60% and the team gets 40%. I'll convert the amount of game you hand in into work points for you. The more you hand in, the more work points and grain you'll get in exchange. Li Xiangdong's mind raced quickly. Both methods had their own advantages. If he chose to use public weapons, then he would have to take on a quota. It was the kind where income was guaranteed no matter drought or flood. As long as he completed it, he would get full work points. Even if he failed to complete it, not much would be deducted, but with that distribution ratio, he would be at a bit of a disadvantage. If he chose to use his own weapons, there wouldn't be that issue. but in turn his income would be directly tied to the game he brought down. If he got game, he could earn more himself, but if he didn't, then he'd really go hungry. For the moment, he couldn't make up his mind, so he looked up at Sun Qingfeng. Sun Qingfeng knew his village's situation all too well. Their hamlet had only a little over 30 households in total, and on the village brigade side, there was only the setup of a single militia squad. They had only 2 rifles, one Type 38 and one Hanyang rifle, and only 20 or 30 rounds of ammunition. All of these were under strict control, so there was no way Xiangdong could use them. The only things they could hand over for him to use were an old muzzleloader and a red-tasseled spear. That wasn't much different from preparing his own weapons. At most, the team would provide the gun, gunpowder, and iron shot. But Xiangdong had no hunting experience. If he failed to bring down any game, the captain would definitely not look good. So after thinking it over, he finally said, "Captain, Dongzi doesn't have any hunting experience either. I'm afraid if he takes a quota, he won't be able to complete it, and then it'll be hard to explain. This year, just let him do it on his own first and see how much game he can get. And next year we can talk about whether he should take a quota or not. What do you think?" Feng Shui did not object, but nodded. "That works too. Let's try it this year first and see whether it works out. What if Dongzi decides tomorrow that he doesn't want to hunt anymore? Then I can arrange other work for him. So what are you planning to do about the gear?" "I just went over to Old Chen's place. Doesn't his family still have an old muzzleloader? I was thinking of buying it from him." "Oh, Old Chen's family. They do have one, but can it still fire?" "Old Chen did say it can fire, but there's no telling how accurate it is." "Then that's good. How much did he ask from you?" "Not much, just 5 yuan. And he's giving me all the gunpowder and iron shot he has left along with it." "Oh right, Captain. From now on you'll still need to issue Dongzi a letter of introduction to buy gunpowder." "No problem. That's simple. If he runs short on gunpowder, he can just come to me for a letter of introduction." As for Xiangdong's household registration and hunting matters, they were settled in just this short while. And then the few of them went back to eating and drinking. They kept drinking until after 4 in the afternoon, and it was already dark by the time they finally broke up. After seeing them off, the family returned to the house. Li Hohat asked Sun Qingfeng, "Honey, why didn't you let Dongzi choose the first option? That way Dongzi could have gotten a bit more grain." "What do you know? It may sound like Dongzi would be getting the better end of the deal, but think about it. If he can bring something back, we'd be the ones losing out. If he can't, then the captain would start having opinions. It's better to hunt on our own first." Li Xiangdong also chimed in, "Yeah, Auntie, my uncle is right. If we take a task from the production team, then if we catch something, our own share will be too small. Things are pretty good the way they are now. If we get something, we'll take the bigger share. If we don't, then I can only blame myself for not being capable. I'll just practice hard. It's not like I could keep failing to catch anything forever." In Li Xiangdong's view, hunting on his own was still more suitable. If he only caught something small, then splitting it with the village would be fine, but what if he caught something big? And besides, the meat of the game was secondary. The main thing was that the pelts were valuable. If he signed a task agreement with the village, then when the time came and the captain asked you for the pelts, would you hand them over or not? Isn't it much better the way things are now? If he catches game, the hides belong to him, while the meat is still split with the village 60-40. Fine then, as long as you two have decided. Hunt well this winter and earn at least a little, so that next spring you can build a house. Once the house is ready, I'll find someone to help arrange a wife for you, and that'll do it." In just a few words, Li Hohat had once again turned the conversation to the matter of carrying on the Li family line. Li Xiangdong scratched his head a little awkwardly. "Auntie, how can we be talking about a wife so soon? I just turned 18 this year." "So what? At 18 you're already an adult. And only with a wife does it count as having a home. In this village, people your age are already starting to arrange marriages. As your aunt, how could I let you stay a bachelor?" Knowing he couldn't argue with his aunt, Li Xiangdong could only change the subject. "By the way, Auntie, Uncle, does that shabby house I slept in last night belong to anyone?" As soon as Li Xiangdong asked that, Li Hohat and Sun Qingfeng knew what he meant. "Oh, that house. It was a temporary house built years ago when the settlement was first established. And later everyone built their own homes, so that house was left empty. No one has lived in it for several years now. What is it, Dongzi? Do you want that house?" That was indeed what Li Xiangdong was thinking. Saving money was only one aspect. Another was that Li Xiangdong felt it would be inconvenient to keep living at his aunt's house. Their home only had 3 rooms. The middle one was the main room, and the east and west sides were bedrooms. Judging from this morning, Auntie and Uncle lived in the east room, while his younger male cousin and younger female cousin lived in the west room. Now that he had come, his younger brother and sister cousins would definitely have to be squeezed over into the east room. That would be fine for a short time, but if he stayed long, it would become inconvenient. So if he could move into his own house sooner, it would be better to do so sooner, so as not to cause trouble for others. So he nodded. I think the walls of that house still look quite solid. If it's fixed up a bit, people should be able to live in it. Wouldn't that also save some money? Sun Qingfeng nodded. That works too. Let's talk to the team leader about it later and see whether he agrees. If he does, then after spring starts, we'll find some people to help you fix it up, and you'll be able to move in very soon. Don't worry about it for now. Just stay here with peace of mind. That made sense. No matter how anxious you are, there's no way to get it done right now. Construction in winter won't work. We can only wait until spring starts. After chatting for a while, everyone in the family got ready to go to sleep. In those days, people generally went to bed quite early, and there was no electricity, nor were there any entertainment activities. If you had a wife, you'd hold your wife and play some games for a while. If you didn't have a wife, then you could only go look for one in your dreams. Li Xiangdong was arranged to sleep in the west room, and his younger brother and sister's bedding was moved to the east room, where they stayed with Sun Qingfeng and Li Hohat. After several days of traveling and not sleeping well last night either, Li Xiangdong fell asleep not long after lying down. Then, in the middle of the night, he heard something in the courtyard scratching at the door with a clack-clack sound. What the heck is that? Li Xiangdong rolled over and sat up at once. He pricked up his ears and listened, and sure enough, something was scratching at the door. He grabbed his cotton jacket and padded pants, put them on, slipped into his shoes, and got out of bed. As soon as he stepped into the main room, he saw Sun Qingfeng also coming out from the east room. Uncle, what's outside? Sun Qingfeng could be considered well-informed. There must be a wolf in the village. It should be a wolf scratching at the door. A wolf. Li Xiangdong walked doubtfully to the doorway of the main room and listened again, but the noise had stopped. Uncle, I'll go out and take a look. Li Xiangdong made as if to open the door. Wait. Sun Qingfeng stopped him, reached out, and picked up the wood-chopping knife leaning by the stove and handed it to Li Xiangdong, while he himself took the kitchen knife from beside the chopping board. Open the door. After the two of them were ready, they gently opened the door a crack and looked outside, but saw nothing at all. Then they opened the door and walked out of the house, standing under the eaves and looking toward all the corners of the courtyard, but still saw nothing. Looks like it probably ran off. Let's go back, Sun Qingfeng said. Li Xiangdong nodded, and just as they were about to turn around and go back inside, from the corner of his eye, he spotted a dark shadow crouched in the passageway between the main house and the east side storage room. What is that? He muttered in puzzlement, carrying the knife as he walked over. When he was still 3 or 4 meters away from the dark shadow, it suddenly sprang up. Damn! Li Xiangdong cried out in alarm and quickly dodged aside, bringing the knife down in a slash with the motion. Then he heard a howl in his ears. The dark shadow quickly leaped over the wooden wall and ran off. Now it wasn't just Li Xiangdong who saw clearly. Sun Qingfeng saw clearly too. It was indeed a wolf. However, when he swung the kitchen knife back, he didn't hit the wolf that was desperate to escape. Li Xiangdong also felt somewhat nervous, having run into wolves again and again. Could it be because the ecological environment here was so good that the wolf pack had multiplied out of control? Or had the wolf that blocked him last night come to avenge its companion? That slash just now felt like it had hit something. Looking down, he saw a blackish piece on the ground. Only when he bent down to pick it up did he realize it was a section of wolf tail. That piece of wolf tail was a little over a span long. No wonder that wolf had let out a miserable cry and run off. Uncle, take a look. Li Xiangdong handed the piece of wolf tail in his hand over. Sun Qingfeng took it and looked at it, then laughed. Yo, you actually chopped off a section. No wonder the wolf was howling. Too bad you didn't hit its body. Otherwise that blow could have killed it. Li Xiangdong felt a little regretful. If you didn't hit it, then so be it. Let's hurry back inside. It's freezing out here. Uncle, do you think that wolf will come back? Definitely not. Wolves are smart. Once it suffers a loss somewhere, it'll definitely avoid that place from then on. Even if it comes into the village again, it won't come to our house. Oh, I see. As the two of them talked, they walked into the house. The people inside had also heard that cry just now, and Li Hohat had put on her clothes and come out from the east room. What happened just now? Nothing. A wolf got into the yard, and Dongzi took a swing and chopped off a section of its tail. So it really was a wolf? Dongzi didn't get hurt, did he? Li Hohat didn't care about the wolf tail at all, and directly asked about Li Xiangdong first. I'm fine, Auntie, it's just a pity that the wolf got away. If it got away, then it got away. As long as you're all fine, that's what matters. All right, hurry up and shut the door properly. Then go back and get some more sleep. All right, Li Xiangdong answered, reached back to close the door, and slid the bolt into place. After this little incident, by the time Li Xiangdong opened his eyes and got up again, it was already light outside, and his Aunt Li Hohat had already started the fire and was cooking in the main room. After getting up and washing up quickly, Li Xiangdong went out again to look at the route the wolf had taken when it ran off last night. The wolf had had its tail chopped off last night, and after jumping over the wall, it had gone straight down toward the woods to the north. The bright red bloodstains in the snow stretched all the way along. If the wolf had been injured somewhere else, he could still have tried to track it. But since the injury was to its tail, there was no way to pursue it. He could see the trail, but all four of the wolf's legs were perfectly fine, and there was no way a man on two legs could ever catch up. Li Xiangdong could only give up on that idea. After breakfast, Li Xiangdong took his letter of introduction and his household registration certificate and went with Sun Qingfeng to the production team leader's house. Today they were going to town to register Li Xiangdong's household. Only after he was registered could Li Xiangdong receive the most basic grain ration from the village and also be allotted a homestead plot. The procedure was actually simple. With the production team leader taking them, Feng Shui knew very clearly who to see first and who to see next. The three of them set out at 7 or 8 in the morning and finished everything in one morning. At noon, they treated Feng Shui to a meal in town, and the three of them returned to the village by nightfall. Over the next few days, Li Xiangdong got acquainted with the people in the village and also collected his grain ration from the brigade. At the same time, he applied for that old dilapidated house as his homestead. Sun Qingfeng also spent 5 kwai to buy back that old foreign-style gun from old Chen's family. The old foreign-style gun was a kind of muzzle-loading smoothbore firearm. In the northeast, it was called an old foreign-style gun or a big pole gun, while in the south it was generally called a native gun or a rustic musket. By this time, however, the old foreign-style gun was no longer the same as those from the late Qing period, because the barrel was now made with seamless steel tubing, about half of which came directly from factories. When a blacksmith made one, he would use an iron block to seal one end as the base of the barrel. The length was between 1 meter and 1.5 meters, and the inside had no rifling. Then he would make the stock and butt from wood, with grooves in the stock to secure the barrel, trigger, and other components, while the butt was shaped with a flat surface to brace against the shoulder for firing. The propellant used was generally black powder. Pour gunpowder into the front end of the barrel, ram it down firmly with the ramrod, then pour an iron shot or a solid slug between the bullet and the gunpowder. You also need to place a wad made of stiff cardboard or scraps of cloth so that when it is fired, it can provide greater driving force. Finally, install a percussion cap at the nipple, and then it is ready to aim and fire. But this kind of old foreign-style gun has very poor accuracy and relies entirely on feel. If you use that kind of fine iron shot, the effective range is only 20 or 30 meters. Fortunately, there is a large quantity of iron shot, so when fired it spreads out in a fan shape with a fairly wide coverage. For small animals like pheasants and rabbits, you don't need very large bullets either. As long as they are within that fan-shaped spread, you'll probably hit them. But if you're hunting large animals like wild boars or wolves, that iron shot is no use. You need a solid slug. Its firing range is somewhat farther, reaching about 50 meters. Beyond that distance, both accuracy and lethality drop a great deal. After getting the gun, Li Xiangdong familiarized himself at home with how to load the powder and how to shoot, and also went outside the village to fire it twice. It wasn't that he didn't want to practice more, but gunpowder, iron shot, and solid slugs all cost money, so he couldn't just practice as much as he pleased. Besides, there wasn't really any accuracy to practice with this old foreign-style gun. It simply had no accuracy to speak of. But before going into the mountains, there were still some things to prepare. This old foreign-style gun could only fire one shot. After firing, it had to be reloaded with powder and iron shot. If an animal happened to charge at him at that moment, he would have a hard time dealing with it. So he also fixed up the family's chopper, heating it red-hot through and hammering it into the shape of a pointed blade. He found an elm pole about as thick as a child's wrist, mounted the modified chopper onto it, and made a spear. With that, the preliminary preparations were considered complete. With everything ready, Li Xiangdong slung the old foreign-style gun on his back, carried the spear in his hand, tucked away some dry rations, and took some thin hemp rope, planning to use it for setting snares, something he had only just learned from Sun Qingfeng. But Sun Qingfeng himself was only half-baked, so what kind of good apprentice could he possibly teach? It was basically just guesswork anyway. Just set them on the paths used by pheasants and rabbits. And as for whether anything would get caught, that was up to fate. Before entering the forest, Xiangdong was still full of confidence. But once he was actually in the forest, he became a bit bewildered. Once inside the forest, animal tracks were indeed everywhere, but he could only recognize a few kinds. And as for when those tracks had been left, or which direction they had gone, he found it hard to judge. He found several trails left by rabbits and pheasants and set more than a dozen snares along them. After that, Xiangdong carried his spear and continued deeper into the forest. He had no particular destination. He just went wherever his feet took him, planning to circle back when the sun started to move westward. And so the day passed. He was exhausted, but he hadn't caught a single prey. He had seen roe deer in the distance, but by the time he chased after them, they had already run far away. By the time the sun turned westward, he could only return home helplessly. Fortunately, Li Hohat and the others had not expected Xiangdong to bring back anything on his first trip into the mountains. And when they saw him return empty-handed, they comforted him and told him not to worry and to take it slowly. Xiangdong also knew this was not something that could be mastered all at once. Without a master to guide him, he could only slowly accumulate experience on his own. And so after wandering around like this for more than 10 days, Xiangdong hadn't gotten a single thing. Even the snares he had set didn't catch so much as a pheasant feather. This left Xiangdong somewhat discouraged. But at times like this, it instead strengthened Xiangdong's resolve to bag some prey no matter what. Even if not for the steamed buns, at least for pride. Early the next morning, Xiangdong got up at the crack of dawn and set out when the sky was just beginning to lighten. And sure enough, today really was quite kind to him. Among the dozen or so snares he had set, there really was a blind pheasant that had blundered into one. When it saw someone coming, it was still flapping with all its might. There was no way Xiangdong was going to let it get away. He swung the gunstock a few times and killed the pheasant, then cut off its head, drained the blood, and stuffed it into a cloth bag. Carrying his old muzzle loader, he kept walking forward. After this bit of success, Xiangdong's confidence greatly increased. He walked another 4 or 5 li or so, and came to a grove of oak trees. This oak grove was not very dense, but there were quite a lot of crisscrossing oak branches and shrubs, making it hard to see very far. Just as he was about to walk into the oak grove, he suddenly heard a gunshot crack from the opposite side of the grove. The moment he heard it, Xiangdong instantly darted behind a tree. It was a reflex, and in such dense woods, if you hear a gunshot and don't take cover, then if the person on the other side mistakes you for prey and fires a shot, that would be trouble. It wasn't as if this had never happened before. Many people who went into the mountains to relieve themselves in the grass or to pick things had been shot after being mistaken for wild boars or roe deer. So at a time like this, you had to stay well hidden to avoid being accidentally injured. After the gunshot, Xiangdong heard the cry of a wild boar, and he quickly took the old muzzleloader off his back, holding the gun at the ready toward the direction the sound had come from. Although he didn't know whether the wild boar would come his way, it was always better to be prepared. In just a short while, he heard rustling and crashing in the oak grove. Peeking out, he saw that about 30 or 40 meters away, a wild boar weighing around 140 to 150 gene was charging wildly, and it was rushing over at a very fast speed. Xiangdong had no time to think. He raised the muzzle and fired a shot straight at the wild boar. The old muzzle loader let out a furious roar, and a cloud of black smoke burst from the muzzle. The 20 or 30 iron pellets loaded in the barrel, each 5 or 6 millimeters in diameter, all sprayed into the boar's body. These iron pellets also came in different sizes. Iron pellets with a diameter of 2 or 3 millimeters, about the size of mung beans, could be loaded at over 100 at a time, and were used for small targets like pheasants or rabbits, aiming for broad spread. Iron pellets 5 or 6 millimeters in diameter, about the size of soybeans, could be loaded 40 or 50 at a time, and were used for medium-small targets like foxes or badgers. Iron pellets 8 to 10 millimeters in diameter, about the size of corn kernels, could only be loaded in quantities of around 10 or so, and could be used to shoot large animals like wolves or wild boars. Lastly, there was the slug, a lead ball about the same size as the inner diameter of the barrel, likewise used for large animals such as wild boars, wolves, or bears. Unfortunately, what Xiangdong had loaded in his gun now was not a slug, but small iron pellets for foxes and badgers. He had not expected to run into a wild boar, and with this kind of ammunition, he could shoot more kinds of targets. Now it was too late to switch, so Xiangdong could only fire like this. But against thick-skinned, tough-fleshed prey like a wild boar, it simply couldn't have the effect of dropping it with a single shot. Instead, the pain only provoked that wild boar. It originally could have passed by more than 10 meters away from Xiangdong, but after taking a shot, it turned around and charged straight at him. And it's incredibly fast too. That's what wild boars are like, stubborn and single-minded. If it were animals like wolves or bears, no matter how fierce they are, once they're injured, their first instinct is to run away. Unless they're forced into a corner with no other choice. Only then will they turn around and fight a person to the death. But wild boars aren't like that. Even if you don't provoke them, they'll still want to gore you a couple of times, let alone after they've been injured. Then they'll really fight the person who hurt them to the death. Otherwise, why would there be a saying among hunters? First boar, second bear, third tiger. It's not that boars are really that formidable. It's that wild boars are just fools, and their temper is genuinely stubborn. For a normal hunter, at a time like this, the gun in his hand would be no better than a fire poker. He'd definitely climb a tree first, then keep tracking after the wild boar leaves, so he wouldn't get hurt himself. But Xiangdong didn't think that way. He hadn't seen any prey for who knows how many days. And now that he'd finally run into a wild boar, how could he let it get away? If it ran off, who knew how long he'd have to chase it? What's more, someone had fired a shot over there just now. If he didn't keep this wild boar here, whose would it count as later? Even if they had to split it, if he killed the wild boar himself, he'd still get a bigger share. With that thought, Xiangdong tossed the old foreign-style shotgun aside, grabbed the long spear made from a chopper, and shouted, "There's someone over here, don't shoot." Then he charged straight at the wild boar. But he wasn't foolish enough to take it head-on. Just as the man and the boar were about to collide, Xiangdong suddenly took a big sidestep and thrust the long spear in his hand toward the wild boar's shoulder blade and ribs. In those days, bayonet fighting was a very important part of military training, and Xiangdong had also taken part in militia training, so he was very familiar with stabbing techniques. And besides, this sort of thing isn't just about skill, it's mainly about strength. Whoever is stronger has the advantage, and Xiangdong just happened to have that advantage. The long spear shot out and accurately pierced into the wild boar through the ribs. Xiangdong had put all his strength into that thrust, and he drove the wild boar hard to the ground. The spearhead pierced out through the ribs on the other side of the boar and pinned into the ground. Naturally, the wild boar couldn't die immediately. It squealed and kept kicking on the ground. No matter how it kicked, Xiangdong gritted his teeth and braced the shaft of the spear, not letting the wild boar break free. Just then, a man came running over through the woods with a gun in his hand. When he ran over and saw Xiangdong's posture, he froze on the spot. He thought to himself, this guy is way too fierce. He actually pinned the wild boar to the ground. After a moment of stunned distraction, he came to his senses and quickly walked up. Man, that's incredible. You actually skewered such a big wild boar. Xiangdong turned his head and grinned when he saw him. Just luck. This wild boar happened to charge over here and let me run into it. That shot just now was yours, right? Yeah, I came around from that side of the woods and happened to see a wild boar here, so I fired a shot. I figured it would take some effort to catch up to it. But I didn't expect you to take it down just like that. Seeing that the wild boar was still struggling, the man drew a knife from his waist and walked over, giving the boar a slash across the neck. Before long, the wild boar stopped moving. The man finally relaxed, looked up at Xiangdong, and said, "Man, which village are you from?" "Oh, I'm from Xiangdong village." "Which village are you from?" "I'm from Nantazwang. It's just a dozen or so li west from here through the woods." "Brother, no need to keep pinning it down. That pig's already done for. Come have a smoke." The man pulled out a cloth bag. Xiangdong lowered his head and glanced at the wild boar. It really was done for. The blood had pretty much stopped flowing, and it was only breathing out through its nose, not in. So he let go and walked over to the man, taking the cigarette he handed him. "My name's Xiangdong. What's your name?" "I'm Lu Dashin. Judging by our ages, I should be older than you, right? Then I'll call you little brother." "No problem. Then I'll call you Brother Lu." "You're too polite, too polite." "Brotherly, you've got some skills. Most people wouldn't dare go head-on with a wild boar." Lu Dashin gave Xiangdong a thumbs up. Xiangdong could only smile bitterly. "I didn't want to go head-to-head with it either. But this lousy gun of mine can only fire one shot before reloading, and I haven't managed to bring down anything for days now, so I was getting anxious." Lu Dashin looked at the old muzzleloader Xiangdong had tossed aside. He smiled and nodded. "That thing really won't do. It's almost older than you are. If you want to hunt big game like wild boars, you've got to get yourself a break-action shotgun." Well, wasn't that stating the obvious? How could Xiangdong not want a good gun? But the problem was, as the saying goes, a hunchback climbing a mountain, short on money. How much would a single-barrel break-action hunting shotgun cost? At the very least over 100 yuan. Where was he supposed to get that? He could only sigh. Sigh. Isn't it just that I don't have any money on hand? I can't afford a new one. And I don't even know where to find a used one. So for now this is all I can use. If I can't hunt wild boars, catching a roe deer or a rabbit is fine too. It's fine, you'll definitely have one in the future. Little brother, I'm often wandering around this area, but I've never seen you before. Are you new to hunting? Yeah, pretty much. I figured hunting could earn a bit more money. Relying on work points alone isn't enough to eat on. Lu Dashin nodded. True, the grain you earn from those work points is only barely enough to get by. If you want to buy a few things, you need some extra income. I think you've got what it takes. With your strength, you can definitely become a good hunter. If there's a chance in the future, how about the two of us go hunting together? Although Li Xiangdong didn't know Lu Dashin well, it wasn't easy to refuse such an invitation, so he smiled and replied politely. Sure. If there's a chance in the future, we can go out together. Just don't think I'm dead weight, big brother. How could that be? One more person means one more helping hand. All right then, let's dress this pig and split it up. While they were chatting, they finished a cigarette. Lu Dashin tossed the cigarette but to the ground and crushed it out, then pulled the knife from his waist and prepared to dress the wild boar. Li Xiangdong couldn't just stand around either. He stepped forward, pulled out the long spear, and then helped out. Lu Dashin was very deft at dressing the wild boar. First he opened up its belly, pulled out all the entrails and other innards and tossed them aside. Then he cut off the 4 hooves and the pig's head and threw them on top of the entrails. Only at the end did he split the wild boar crosswise into 2 halves and say to Li Xiangdong, "Little brother, you pick 1 half, and the rest is mine." No, brother Lu. Without that shot of yours, I wouldn't have been able to hold this pig down. You should pick first, and what's left will be mine. Li Xiangdong said politely as well. The two of them declined back and forth for a while, and in the end Lu Dashin still chose first. He picked the half with the front legs and left the half with the hind legs to Li Xiangdong. After all, Li Xiangdong was the one who had brought down this wild boar. He definitely ought to get a bigger share, and Lu Dashin understood that. After dividing it up, Lu Dashin packed his half into his sack, then sat down again and pulled out his tobacco pouch. Looking at the offal on the ground, Li Xiangdong asked, "Brother Lu, are you not taking these things?" With a cigarette in his mouth, Lu Dashin glanced at Li Xiangdong a couple of times, and from his expression it was clear that he now truly believed Li Xiangdong was a complete greenhorn. These things can't be taken away. You have to leave some for the animals in the mountains. We're making a living on their turf. If we kill too much and take everything away, then the wolves in the mountains and the like won't have anything to eat. And when that happens, they'll start coming into the village to prey on people or livestock. Don't you think? Li Xiangdong thought it over and realized it did make sense. If the wolves in the mountains had nothing to eat, they couldn't just starve, could they? Of course they'd come into the village. Brother Lu, you're right. We can't do things too ruthlessly. Right. That's exactly the reasoning. So, when we hunt in the mountains, we also have to follow certain rules. When you bring down prey, you should always leave some for them. And there's another reason too. Guess what it is? Another reason? Li Xiangdong couldn't help frowning and thought carefully for a moment. Could it be because of disease? Lu Dashin looked at Li Xiangdong somewhat surprised. You know about that too? I know a little, I guess. Looks like I got it right. That's right, you did. After you bring down prey, you look at its internal organs. If it's sick or full of parasites, then none of the meat can be kept. If you eat it, it's easy for something to go wrong. In the past, people have even died from eating meat like that, so later on people passed down the rule not to take these things. You should pay attention to that too when you hunt in the future. Lu Dashin reminded him. Li Xiangdong had never expected that hunters in the old days had already discovered this problem. In his memory, there really were cases of wild animals infecting people and causing death, and they were very serious ones at that. All right, I've got it. Thanks, Brother Lu. Don't mention it. Fellow travelers are all brothers. Meeting each other is fate. Even if I didn't tell you these things, sooner or later someone else would. Lu Dashin said with a smile, waving his hand. Then he added, all right, we've counted today as a decent haul. Time to head home. My wife and kids are still waiting. If you ever come around Nantazwang, stop by my house for a sit. My house is the 3rd one from the east end of the village. All right, no problem. If you ever get to Xiangdong village, come by my place too. Our village is small. Just ask around and you'll find me. Li Xiangdong replied with a smile. The two of them shouldered their respective shares, parted ways there, and turned toward their own homes. Feeling the weight on his shoulders, Li Xiangdong felt happy. After running around for so many days, he'd finally gotten some results. Although this wild boar had been split with Lu Dashan, and he had only gotten a little over half, it was still a gain, some 60 or 70 gene of meat. More importantly, it boosted Li Xiangdong's confidence in hunting. The 60 or 70 gene of pork on Li Xiangdong's shoulders didn't feel all that heavy, and home wasn't especially far away either. For the previous 10-odd days, he'd only been wandering through the woods around the village. Because he was afraid he wouldn't be able to make it home that night, and something dangerous might happen. As someone with no hunting experience and no experience spending the night outdoors in severe cold, Li Xiangdong didn't dare joke around with his own life. Even back in his hometown in Xiangdong, winter nights outside were cold enough to be unbearable, let alone here. There was a difference of more than 20 degrees between the two. In Xiangdong, unless there was extreme weather, winter temperatures basically never went below -10 degrees. But over here, it was casually -20 or 30 degrees, and at night in the mountains it could even drop to -30 or 40. Even a freezer doesn't get that cold. Isn't there a saying that in the Northeast in winter, if you're eating at a restaurant and the waiter asks whether you want your drink at room temperature or chilled, then you absolutely have to ask for chilled, because chilled is still water, while room temperature is a chunk of ice. So these past few days he hadn't gone far. And today he only ventured deeper into the woods because there really wasn't any prey to be found around the village. The final result was pretty good. It's just that when he carried this half side of pork back, he was delayed a bit, and when he was still 4 or 5 li from home, it had already gotten dark. Once it got dark, he could no longer see the surroundings clearly, and Li Xiangdong always felt uneasy. Actually, that was only natural. He wasn't the kind of hunter who spent all year roaming the mountains. This situation was different from being on the main road or out by the village fields. On the main road or in the village, he had some confidence, knowing there would definitely be people nearby, and he could still psych himself up. But deep in these remote mountains and old forests, it was different. Although the snow reflected a bit of light, the layered trees and the wild grass and shrubs covering the ground were all one dark mass. He just kept feeling as if something was watching him from the woods.